The congregation has asked for God's mercy, blessing, and shining face, and they have declared the purpose behind those requests. They desire that God's way be known among all nations. Now the prayer presses further. The congregation does not stop at asking the nations to praise God. They ask for something deeper, that the nations would be glad. O let the nations be glad, and sing for joy, for thou shalt judge the people righteously, and govern the nations upon earth. Selah. Psalm 67, verse 4. The command is, let the nations be glad, and sing for joy. The congregation prays not that the nations would acknowledge God or submit to Him out of compulsion. They pray the nations would experience genuine gladness. The word for glad carries the idea of joy that breaks outward, joy that cannot stay contained inside a person. The congregation pairs this gladness with singing for joy, which describes a shout of triumph, the sound a soldier makes when victory is confirmed. Nations are not praying for something uncertain. They are invited to shout as people who already know the outcome. This gladness is not manufactured. It flows from a specific source. For thou shalt judge the people righteously. The nations have reason to rejoice because God judges justly. The nations that have lived under corrupt rulers and unjust courts are invited to be glad because God's judgment is coming. Corrupt judges pervert justice for personal gain. Powerful men escape accountability while the poor receive no justice. The congregation prays that the nations would see God's righteous judgment as good news, not as a threat. And for those who have suffered under human injustice, God's righteous judgment is the best news imaginable. The second half of the verse adds another reason for gladness. God will govern the nations upon earth. The word govern means to lead, to shepherd, to guide with a directing hand. God does not judge from a distance. He governs the nations, directing their paths according to His purposes. This governing is not tyranny. The congregation prays for the nations to discover a different governance, one rooted in righteousness and care, rather than exploitation. The congregation sits with the weight of what they have declared. God judging righteously and governing the nations upon earth is not a small thought. It demands reflection before moving forward. Let the people praise Thee, O God. Let all the people praise Thee. Psalm 67, verse 5. The congregation repeats verse 3 word for word. This is not careless repetition. In biblical poetry, repetition functions as emphasis and structure. The prayer for universal praise frames the central declaration of verse 4 the way two posts frame a gate. Verse 3 opened the frame. Verse 5 closes it. Everything in verse 4, the gladness, the singing, the righteous judgment, the governing of nations, stands between these two identical petitions. The repetition also carries a different weight the second time. After verse 4 has declared why the nations should be glad, the petition for their praise becomes more urgent. The congregation has now given the nations every reason to worship. God's righteous judgment answers their suffering. God's governing hand answers their experience of corrupt leadership. Given these realities, the congregation presses the petition again with the same words. Let the people praise Thee, O God. Let all the people praise Thee. No nation is excluded. No people group falls outside this prayer. The congregation prays for all of them without qualification.